Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Another edition of LandO's Logic, and today we are talking on something that I honestly did not think that we'd be talking on for at least another season, which is the official retirement from Crimsix. Yes, he has officially announced that he is retiring from Call of Duty. Really, I mean, just an unbelievable career. And what I really want to do in this video, this edition of LandO's Logic, is to actually talk about what he was able to do and to ask the question, is he actually the greatest player of all time? Because again, it's so easy. It's so easy to join one side versus the other and to say, no, I think it's Crimsix. No, I think it's Scump. No, I think it's Karma. Whatever the player that you throw out there may be. It's very easy to just hear, a certain person say, no, I think this is the guy, and to not actually form a true opinion on it. And so what I wanted to do is to make a video that outlines Crim's career, talk about the accolades, talk about the accomplishments, the history of what he was able to do from Black Ops 2 on to Vanguard, and go over it and talk to you guys and explain to why I believe that not only, this is my opinion, not only do I believe that Crimsix is the greatest player of all time, but I believe there's not a debate. I don't think there's actually a debate to be had. Now, are people going to have different opinions? Of course they are. But I feel like, as it stands for right now, we do need to come to more of a conclusion on who the greatest player of all time is. Because it sounds like it's usually this of like, hey, I think this is the greatest player of all time, but he's at least top 3. I want to try and erase that more and more, at least for right now. And this video is sparked a little bit by the NADESHOT tweet, which again, this is like no hate at all onto Nade's tweet. It basically was just saying, hey, incredible career from Crim, et cetera, without a doubt, top 5 player of all time. And it's not as if he did anything wrong, and I'm not asking anybody to go to that tweet and say, what are you talking about, all this stuff. No, it's to basically recognize that really is the conversation that we have, and it feels like we need more videos like this one, content that I'm going to try and provide really for the foreseeable future, which is to focus in on, to highlight, to put in a better spotlight what really are these arguments, what I guess you could say worth is there in them, and what really is the actual numbers, what really is the stories of these things. And so that's what I wanted to do. That's really what I want to do in this moment, is to outline Crim's career and to talk about what he was able to accomplish throughout these last 10 plus seasons, this decade plus of Call of Duty Esports history. So I do recommend that you listen to this. And if you have the same opinion, great. If you don't have the same opinion, I then just ask you to listen to it, and then we can have this conversation either on social media or in the comments below. This is not meant to stir up, to get anybody angry. It's just meant to highlight what was, in my opinion, the greatest career in Call of Duty Esports history and the greatest player of all time. Okay, let's get into this. So, Crimsix retires as the most winningest player in Call of Duty history. 38 titles. A few of those are debatable online, all kinds of stuff out there, but the number that we will rock with is 38 titles, undisputed, most winningest player of all time. A few of those titles are world championships. Crimsix holds 3 world titles. The only other players to have that same number are Karma and Clayster. Crimsix also retires with $1.4 million plus in earnings, and technically, as of the most recent championship, is second most in overall earnings throughout a Call of Duty player's career. Not talking Warzone, strictly Call of Duty Esports. He retires as number 2, just behind Aristides, who, as we know, just finished second at the most recent COD champs. More incredibly insane stats and just insane numbers from Crimsix's career. He also managed to win a title for every team that he has ever played for. Every single organization that Crimsix played for, he at least won them one title. Now, I will say this. People could be like, oh, he didn't play for a whole lot of teams. That's the point, right? So the whole thing is that this is unbelievably impressive that he was able to do that. He also only played from Black Ops 2 to Vanguard for 4 different teams. Cole/EG, Optic Gaming, and then into the CDL era, Dallas Empire, and finally the New York Subliners. And up until NYSL, he had won a world championship for every team that he has ever played for. Let that sink in for a moment, right? Up until this last season, for 9 COD titles, the guy had won a world championship for every team that he had played for. As I said, Cole/EG, Optic, and the Dallas Empire. Not only was he successful in the big moments, but he finished, and this is just lands, nothing online at all is calculated into this. Finished with a 3.9 average LAN placement over 10 COD titles, played a total of, and this number is rough, but it's basically right around it, 77 Call of Duty LANs, which is crazy. And as I said, throughout years like MW, for example, where some of the events were online, not counting those, these are when he is on LAN physically, in majors as well. Played a total of 77 LAN events, placed outside of the top 8 times on those LANs. So whenever he was at LAN, played 77 of those, finished outside of the top 8 times. That's wild. That is absolutely absurd. And like I said, he placed outside of the top 8 times. From Black Ops 2 to Vanguard, that's 10 different COD titles. So not even every year was he having one single event where he finished outside of the top 8. Now, he is also one of the only players to play at every single COD champs that we have ever had from 2013 up until this year. The other player being Scump. Now, I personally believe that will eventually change. I think that Scump will play at this next Call of Duty Championships in Modern Warfare 2, and then he will go down as not being able to have that accomplishment. But for right now, sits with that accolade. He also has the longest gap between winning his first and last world championship, which is just a crazy stat. So he won his first official COD Champs title in 2014, later wins his final Call of Duty championship in 2020, which again, 6 years, right? 6 years from when he won his first world championship, then to winning his last world championship. That is just an overall unbelievably dominant stretch where he was involved in the finals. So it's like this. It goes like this: 2014, 2017, 2020. That is just a consistent stretch of at least every few years winning something. He never won back-to-back, which would be impressive, but at the same time, one of the biggest arguments about his career is longevity. And the fact that he was able to do that, to me, screams consistency, and it screams what is just a truly one-in-a-lifetime type of career. Now, what's also fascinating is that in 3 out of his last 4 champs appearances, he's finished outside of the top 3 one time. Like, if we're talking about, okay, at one point, CRIM was a great player, and then he trailed off and wasn't good anymore. That didn't happen with this guy. If you look at his last 4 champs appearances, it is actually his most consistent average champs placements of his career. If you're looking at the CDL era specifically, these last 3 seasons, that would even be better. Think about that for a moment. His last 3, if not last 4, if we want to talk about the CDL era or include Black Ops 4, finished outside of the top 3 one time, and from an average champs placement, the event that we truly think about at the end of the year. We can forget major winners. We can forget major losers. We always remember who wins champs. The fact that in his last 4 seasons, last 3, whatever you want to call it, in both of those stretches, it only gets better, right? If you look at the last 4, most consistent run ever. Last 3, most consistent average placement ever. It's just wild. It really is. It is It is absolutely wild, the fact that in the CDL era, where so many veteran players, so many men, so many players have retired. I don't know why I said men, but so many players have retired. And the fact that he was able to put up his greatest average placements is unbelievable. It really is. It's unbelievable. Now, what I want to do, now that we've kind of gone over a bunch of accolades, and we could list off even more than that. Like, we really scratched the surface, but I don't want to get too in depth with all this stuff. Maybe that's time for another video, and you guys can let me know if you think we should do that. But now what I want to do is talk about his career year by year, how he got to where he did, the storylines of which he got to certain places. Maybe you're new to the Call of Duty scene. Maybe you haven't watched since Black Ops 2. Like, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that haven't. Let's talk about that. So, played prior to Black Ops 2, but that's where we're going to pick up his career. Played a lot, you know, early days, switched over to Halo, then came back to COD. But basically was picked up by Aches and TP heading into Black Ops 2, which already goes down as one of the greatest roster changes ever made. They pick up this unbelievably talented guy named Crimsix alongside of a player named Fears. Those 4 players would go on to win Frag Cup under Complexity. That I think was the first online event of Black Ops 2. So start off recognizing, hey, this team has got something, right? We figured out that this roster is going to see some success, and that carried them all the way throughout this Black Ops 2 title, at least the core 3, that being Crimsix, Aches, and TP. They would later go on to their very first LAN together, all 3 of them on the same team together, and they would lose at UMG Chicago 2012, which was the infamous push that took place between Nade and Aches that would set up, I mean, one of the greatest rivalries in Call of Duty Esports history was Aches versus NADESHOT, Aches versus Optic Gaming. Truly historical, and all of it started with CRIM and Complexity being at their first ever LAN together, UMG Chicago 2012. Crimsix and Complexity would later go on to their very first ever COD champs. The roster change is made. They go into the Black Ops 2 champs. Once again, lose to who? Optic Gaming. But it was in a Game 5, Round 11, the first ever COD champs, 2013, Crimsix and Complexity. They've been kind of number 1, or rather been number 2, number 3, number 4, whatever it may be. They go into that tournament, go Game 5, Round 11. We all remember the historical play, the reaction from Scott as he was able to find 3 players in the round. Crimsix and Complexity end up outside of the tournament. They get eliminated. And what was one of the greatest plays that we've ever seen, Complexity finishes top 4. And so in really 2 big moments for CRIM and Complexity, they lose in the finals versus Optic. They go to champs, they lose to Optic again, but this time in Game 5, Round 11. It hurts, right? It absolutely hurts. But what happened after that, right? What happened after, we know that Impact would go on to win that. They had like a 4 event spree where they were able to win championships. What eventually happened right after champs, as a matter of fact? After CRIM and Complexity, I don't want to say they get humiliated, but they do lose in that rivalry type of matchup. What happens after that? Not only does CRIM and Complexity instantly, and I mean instantly, the very next event, and for future events, showcase why they deserve to now be number 1. Not only were they destroying the prior world champions Farico Impact within months of their championship, not only were they destroying them, but they were destroying everybody. Crimsix and Complexity proceeded to win every event after 2013 champs. They won every single event but 2 up until COD champs the next season. That's wild, right? A year time span. Crimsix and Complexity lose a total of 2 events and they win every other one leading up until the following champs. Unbelievably dominant. What I believe is it's definitely up there. I'd have to compare it, go into the real details of it, but without question, one of the most dominant stretches that we have ever seen from a team, from a player, from a group of players in this moment. And we know there's a roster change that obviously occurs as well, picking up Clay during that time. So like I said, after 2013 champs, Cole plus CRIM would go on to win the next 3 events. They would finish second at PAX. Then they'd go on to win the next 5 events in a row. That stretch led into a new COD title, by the way. They would then finish second at regionals, which is the champs in a qualifier to strictly business, by the way. It was actually at that event. And then they would go on to not just be dominant, not just win everything, basically, outside of 2 events, but they would go on to actually win the championship in 2014. They'd go 8-0 in total series while finishing 24-4 in total map count, and also beating Team Envy 3-0 in the COD Champs Grand Finals. And it wasn't just that either, right? Cole/EG, they later turned into Evil Geniuses. We refer to them as the same. They would also go on to win 2 more events in a row after champs. Then later on won 2 more events at different points throughout COD Ghosts. Unbelievable, right? An unbelievable time frame between Black Ops 2, post champs, and then up until really the end of Call of Duty Ghosts. Basically a season and a half, but more specifically, just a year time span where Crimsix was in the finals and dominating basically every tournament, basically every single event. So to this point, right, Crimsix has played in Black Ops 2 and played in Ghost. 2 seasons into his career, he has won world championship and has won 12 total championships. 1 ring, 12 total championships in just 2 seasons, in just 2 years. And also was considered, and Black Ops 2 was considered one of the best players in the game. There's no doubt about it in his rookie year by definition. But also in Ghosts, in that title, was considered the best player in the game. Now, there was debates for that based on a lot of players who have given out their list. They would agree with me. A majority of them, including myself, have CRIM as the best player in Call of Duty Ghosts. So what happened, right? What happened? Why are we acting as if this is when one chapter ends? It's because it does. Cole/EG, there was essentially some organization drama that happened for why Complexity switched to Evil Geniuses. There was also some internal team drama. They weren't seeing the unbelievably dominant success that they were having. Like I said, in that infamous year and a half time span, the team decides to split apart, moving into what is one of the, I guess you could say, biggest seasons that Call of Duty Esports has had from a development standpoint, from a league standpoint, heading into Advanced Warfare. Crimsix decided to split away from Eggs and TP after being the villain, after being Crimbot, somebody that nobody really knew a ton about, but just knew how amazing that he was at the game. Came into Optic Gaming alongside a Formal, and then would join alongside 2 other members who we know were already there, Scump and Nade. And then CRIM would go from the Complexity Dynasty right into the Optic Dynasty. That's the crazy part. Like, he didn't skip a beat. It was like, okay, I had this unbelievably dominant run for a year and a half. Now I'm going to jump right into the Optic Dynasty, which was 5 COD titles long. He spent 5 Call of Duty titles on Optic Gaming and jumped from Black Ops 2 dominant, Ghost 8 is dominant, and then into Advanced Warfare, where they were also incredibly dominant. Crimsix and Optic would go on to win 9 out of the 14 events, and on top of that, Optic Gaming was involved in 13 out of the 14 grand finals. There was one time in Advanced Warfare where Crimsix's name was not mentioned in the grand finals, that being champs, which of course was the biggest one. And now, while champs did sour the season without a doubt, they were without question the most favored team going into that tournament. It didn't take away, however, from the closing out of the season, where Crimsix and Optic Gaming would close out the MLG World Finals finishing in first place. And we would then realize that COD Champs probably shouldn't be in the middle of the season. It should probably be at the end of the season, which would later take place moving into Black Ops 3 and from that moment. So again, another incredibly dominant season from Crimsix. More and more continued success in 3 years. He now comes in to Black Ops 3. It's the second year of the Optic Dynasty, and they had a slightly slower start this year. UMG South Carolina, which honestly you may not even consider to be an actual LAN in some cases, because it was the first event where we were on the new consoles on the next gen. Tons of Bluetooth problems, lots of delay when it came down to like controllers and things like that. Some players didn't even play until Championship Sunday. I was at that event, but they did finish top 8. So we will list that as an actual result. It does factor into all the numbers that we've talked about. However, you know, it was unfortunate what took place at the tournament, but not taking anything away from the team that won it, which I think was Rise Nation, if mine serves me right. But later, Optic Gaming would pick up the pace, right? A little bit of a slower start. They lost at Totinos, which was the invitational tournament that didn't count. They go into UMG South Carolina, don't finish where they want to, would then go on to win 4 of the next 5 events leading up into champs for Black Ops 3. We all know what ended up happening at Black Ops 3 champs, one of the most historical moments in COD history. They go down to the losers bracket. They face off against Aches and Cloud9. Another chapter, another historical moment in the Aches versus Optic Gaming story. Aches once again gets his revenge in a Game 5, Round 11 versus Optic. They get knocked out. And so now, while it has been dominant, it has been a lot of success, a lot of accolades, Optic Gaming and Crimsix have yet together to win that world championship. The reason why CRIM and Formal, but CRIM went to this Optic Gaming team was not just to win, but it was to win world championships. And now in this next title, their third really season together, it felt like now was the time, and it felt like this has to be the moment. If we don't win it this season, it may never happen. The third year of the Optic Dynasty, another slower start. They go on, Optic Gaming does, to win back-to-back events. They would later go on to close out the season, going back-to-back again, winning playoffs, and finally winning champs, delivering Optic their first and only ever COD Champs Worlds victory. Crimsix would win his second ever World Championship and also helped close the book, deliver, like I said, the first ever championship for Optic Gaming, first World Championship for them, and then also helped close the book on the greatest COD esports storyline to date, Optic Gaming's dynasty run to winning a World Championship. So that story ends for the most part, right? The Optic Dynasty then carries forward into their 4th season. And for those that remember it, was not a good year. Was not a good year at all. The worst season of Crim's career. One of the worst seasons, and maybe the worst one ever for Optic Gaming historically. No championships, no titles. Finished top 24 at champs that year. A major, major mark on Optic Gaming's legacy, on Crimsix's. They made just one grand final that season. And who else other than Aches, who was able to deliver a 3-0. It had to be a 3-0. Optic could not win a single map in this series. If they win one, they move into the bracket stage. They don't end up doing that. Aches and EG get another major W over this team. And then EG later went on to win champs based off of that, which is one of the wilder stories in Call of Duty Esports history, was that run from the team. But ultimately, it was not a great moment. You know, that was when this, and World War II, that was also when the Dynasty decided to split. Crimsix and Scump stayed together. Karma ended up taking a leave of absence for a moment. Formal went to another roster. They would later bring in Octane and Methods. Finished top 24 at champs. Then we move into Black Ops 4, right? The 5th title for Crimsix and Scump together, as they would stick together. They would drop Octane and Methods moving into this next year. Like like I said, the partnership between those two felt like it was as strong as ever. They decided to pick back up Karma. It's a new era. We're in 5v5 now. They ended up adding TJ and Dashy to the lineup, and they would go on to win the first season's event. They finally were able to right the wrongs a little bit from World War II. They win that first event at Vegas, I believe it was. And then later on, wouldn't see a ton of ultimate success, a few high place finishes, but later would finish out top 3 at Champs. And at this point in Crimsix's career, as we said, he has won tons of championships, already is the most winningest player of all time. And as of this moment, we then start to hear about franchising, right? Franchising is going to be a thing. The Call of Duty League is here. The Call of Duty World League is coming to an end. And then it was announced that Optic and Crimsix were separating. It was a huge deal. Crim had just spent the last 5 Call of Duty titles with this organization. They had the Dynasty. They won the World Championship. He and Scump were, it sounded like best friends, really, during this time. They decide to look elsewhere. They decide to split apart from him. And then we have this massive drama between Crim and the Optic Gaming organization. And really, a lot of people thought that this might just be it, right? I mean, if you look at World War II and Black Ops 4 only has 1 championship to speak of, 1 title to speak of in the last 2 years, you know, just isn't playing the same way anymore, hasn't been a top player in the game. Maybe his time is over. And as we started to think about, you know, there's a lot of players who are coming into the league, you know, a bigger spotlight than ever is going to be on Call of Duty now with franchising. This could be it, right? He's no longer with Scump and Optic. He's no longer with Aches and TP anymore. He's going to have to go out on his own. And what's he going to do, right? What's he really going to do? And we would find out very quickly. In one of the most important seasons of Crimsix's career, he would join the Dallas Empire, which was Envious, Team Envy's brand. He would join that alongside of Clayster and Hook, and alongside of 2 rookie players known as Shotzi and Illy. Shotzi coming from the Halo scene, Illy being a very well-known, talented S&D player, an underage player for like the last 4 or 5 years. But a lot of question marks in this Dallas Empire team, right? He's reuniting with Clay. He's playing with Hook, which is great. But really, what really are these unknown quantities of Shotzi and Illy? How are they going to play? So Crimsix in this huge season for his career would go on to win 4 home series titles alongside of a Call of Duty World Championship again. It's crazy. It is. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It really doesn't. Like, where you really expected for his career to finally kind of come to a halt. You know, when you've watched a lot of players over the years, you can kind of see that trajectory of like, okay, you know, they've won 2 titles this year, then 1 title this year, then 0, and then, okay, now it's time to retire. In that moment where it was like, this may be the end, he may be starting to kind of enter into that time frame where it's time to hang it up. He and the Dallas Empire would win 4 home series, which you have to consider not every team was there, but would win 4 home series championships, which is really all that you had at the moment. And then when it mattered the most, would win the World Championship at the end of the season. Wins really the first ever franchising world title. Wins his 3rd ever ring. Does it with a group of players that he's never played for outside of Clayster. And then also does it versus the Atlanta FaZe, who in that moment were the heavy favorites coming into that series, had been very dominant, looked like they had all the talent in the world, just a few little mistakes, but the gun skill was there. I remember, right? I was somebody who earlier on actually in the season had said, you know what, I think Dallas Empire is going to be my pick. And I'll be honest with you, there's a lot of people who didn't think that. There was a lot of people on you know, who were discussing and talking and content and things like that, saying, you know what, this is definitely going to be Atlanta FaZe Championship. We are with Atlanta all the way. Feels like the stars are aligning for this young group. It's going to happen. And what ends up happening? Crim takes it versus an unbelievably talented group of young players on the Atlanta FaZe. Simp, Abizi, Celium, Priest up, Major Maniac. And not only did they beat Atlanta FaZe, but they beat them 5-1. One of the most dominant grand finals of a champs that we've ever seen. And CRIM, by the way, voted as the Grand Finals Series MVP. So just to top it off, like in case you had any doubts about if Crimsix still has it, does he have the ability to win after this unbelievable career? Now coming into franchising where he's on his own, he's going to have to make this big step. What's he really going to do? He's going to win a bunch of home series. He's going to win the overall championship versus a team that he wasn't expected to beat, the Atlanta FaZe, in dominant fashion, and then also would be called the series MVP. Unbelievable. The drama would only continue for Dallas Empire in terms of going from a positive then to a negative. Within days, it was announced that we are switching from 5v5 into 4v4 heading into Cold War. A very difficult moment for Dallas Empire. It was not something that they were planning for. And I think that honestly, things would have worked out better for Crimsix, for Dallas, if that didn't have to end up being a thing, if it wasn't so sudden possibly. But regardless, it ends up occurring. The players on the team, essentially the younger guys, end up choosing Crimsix over Clay to basically lead them moving into the next title. Cold War, a solid season. A solid season. Didn't win an official title, no official tournament wins, but only finished outside of the top 4 one time. Had a big roster move in the middle of the season where they had to drop Hook, picked up a unknown quantity in Vivid, and would later go on to finish 3rd at COD Champs. So really by any other player's margin, that's a very good year. You finished outside the top 4 one time. We're in Cold War, which is last season. Competition is at its highest. Finished top 3 at Champs. That's great, right? Just behind Atlanta, just behind Toronto. Those were the 2 best teams in the game. No question. Crimsix and Dallas Empire right there in at that 3rd spot. And then now we head into Vanguard, the last official title now of Crimsix's career. Probably the hardest title that Crimsix has ever had to play in. He was released by the Dallas Empire coming into this year. CRIM, once again, joins alongside of Glacier for what's their 3rd time now. They did it on Dallas. They were on Complexity prior to that. They join in hand once more. And New York starts off with one of the worst beginnings of a season that we've seen from a team. Especially from a team that had very high expectations, right? We're thinking, okay, New York Subliners got some young guns on the team. Maybe this is going to be Dallas Empire 2.0. Not at all the case. They would go on to finish last at both Major 1 and Major 2. Made all kinds of roster changes, brought players in, brought players out, drama all the time with the New York Subliners. Then made some big moves, brought in some pieces that people had questions about. And after those moves were made, the right moves were made, Crimsix and NYSL would go on to win the CDL Pro-Am event, which there were no points on the line for it. We did have challenger teams playing at that event, but Crimsix and the New York Subliners would go on to win that title. Then going into Major 3, finished last at that tournament as well. So up until this point, last place at Major 1, last place at Major 2. They finally get their bearings to the CDL Pro-Am. After some major chokes at Major 3, they end up getting eliminated top 12 once more. And then, because only the top 8 teams make it to champs, NYSL, Crimsix helped lead the team by going from the 11th place in the standings to somehow, some way getting the 8th and final spot at champs. Not only did they pull off this unbelievable accolade through the online atmosphere, but when it came to land in one of the greatest endings of a season, one of the greatest storylines, to be honest with you, in Call of Duty Esports history, Crimsix managed to get into champs, keep that undefeated champ streak alive, get New York to champs. And on top of that, not only would they get the 8th and final spot at COD champs, would also finish 2nd at the New York Major, just falling short to the LA Thieves in that event. And then in his final ever tournament, Call of Duty Championships 2022 in Vanguard, one game away from beating Atlanta FaZe in round 1 in YSL, went up 2-0, would later get reverse swept by the Atlanta FaZe, and then in somewhat ceremonious fashion would later lose to Optic Texas in the losers bracket, and that would be how Crimsix ends out his legendary career. As I said, in a ceremonious fashion, playing against Optic Gaming, facing off against Scump, and that's it. That's it. It's all right. Why do we make this video? Right? Why do we just go through all of that stuff? The reason why I wanted to go through all of that is because I'm tired of the whole, I think he's number one. I think Crimsix is the greatest player of all time, but I guess he's definitely top 5. He's definitely top 3. No, he's number 1, right? He is the number 1 player of all time, and I don't think there's a debate. I really don't. I don't think that there is a debate that needs to be had. As it stands at this moment, the day that Crimsix has retired, he retired as the greatest Call of Duty player of all time. Was he the greatest player on every team that he ever played for, talent-wise? No, obviously not, right? No great player who is brought up in this conversation each year of their career was ever or was always the greatest player for their team every single season, right? That is the best part about Call of Duty Esports in some ways, is that it's a new title every season. It's the reason why the esport has existed for as long as it has, is because of that fresh new game every single season. And the most impressive part is that CRIM actually managed to accomplish the more impressive part of that, which is that he managed to accomplish the ultimate goal in esports, in Call of Duty Esports, which is to win, right? That's what he was able to do. He's able to do that more than anybody, and he was able to do it throughout all of these titles, throughout all of these games, throughout these different rosters, throughout franchising, stepping into franchising, which was a big deal. A lot of veterans, and I mean a lot of veterans, we lost in franchising. Crimsix was able to win a world championship in the first year of franchising. But not only did he win tournaments, but he won world championships, ties the overall record for the most world championships of any player, as I said, alongside of Karma and alongside of Clay. The biggest thing for me is that you can talk about players who peaked, players who had a higher moment of time where they were the greatest player in the game. CRIM definitely had that. But the most impressive part to me is that CRIM had the longevity and the ability to win in all kinds of different circumstances. And the fact that he was able to win consistently despite, like I said, all kinds of different things that were tossed his way. Having to go to different rosters, having to switch teams. And the fact that he only actually played for 4 rosters goes to show the respect and the level of appreciation and confidence that these franchises and teams had in his abilities. And to me, one thing that he kind of started to use as a quote for such a long time was that he figured out how to play COD the right way. And that to me is the most important, one of the most important parts about all of this, is that you don't become the greatest ever at something by being perfect, because nobody's going to be perfect, right? He didn't finish first at every single tournament. That's not going to happen. Nobody will ever be able to do that. But CRIM realized how to become as close to perfect as possible, which is not always having him be the best player on the team. It's by knowing who to surround yourself with, how to win, who to put in the right spots. And that to me is what makes him the greatest player of all time. Is it technically because he won all these tournaments? Yes, but it's because of the way that he was able to win all of these tournaments. It wasn't because he was the guy each and every single time. That's not possible, right? That's there in no way is that possible from any or every player or any player that you'd put in an argument against him. Nobody's able to do that. It's because he always chose the right path. He always chose the right team, right players, right way to play. And like I said, it's also not even about just winning the most championships, but it was because of the continued success over such a vast amount of time. He checks off all the boxes, right? Did he have that dominant first year? We talked about that. Did he have a dominant moment of time where he was the best player in the game? Absolutely he did. Right? Did he win world championships? Yeah, he won 3 of them. Right? Was there a time period where, for a certain amount of time where, he was winning championship? Yeah, he did that too. He did anything and everything and had a career that will never, ever be replicated by anybody in Call of Duty Esports history forever. Like, I don't know if anybody is ever going to catch 38. The little player that could possibly do that is Scump, which again, championships are debatable, but if we are saying that CRIM is at 38, I think Scump sits right around 29, 30. I don't know. With having 5, 6, 7 events, basically every season, with the recent rumors talking about, whatever it may be, Scump maybe retiring the next season or so, it's possible, but I don't think that it's likely that Scump or anybody ever throughout COD history will catch Crimsix's 38 championships. I think that he will retire at the very least with the most titles of anybody ever. And again, it's difficult because we were having more events back then. I totally get it, but that number is just the way that it is, won't be able to be reached. And like I said, Crimsix, as he got older, well, the skill and the talent may have started to decrease. He started to develop the right way to play Call of Duty. That is the way that it increased. And he learned a lot of things from the Dynasty runs, right? The way that Optic Gaming was able to win was based off of skill. As he got older, it was about playing Call of Duty the right way to be able to take over skill. And we saw that in Dallas Empire, how they were able to beat Atlanta FaZe at the 2020 COD Champs Grand Final. Wasn't based solely off of talent, but it was based off of playing the game the right way, developing strategies, figuring out how to outplay your opponent without just your reaction time, your gun skill being better. He displayed that a lot throughout the end of his career. Now, while I'll say this, he made the right decisions, he took advantage of opportunities and literally just won. The common denominator of all these titles, of the dynasties, of the success, is Crimsix. He was the common denominator of all of these things. And while time does always win, for right now, time is going to have to take a back seat for the foreseeable future, because we're going to remember this career for a very, very long time. We're going to remember who is and has been the greatest player in Call of Duty Esports history, that being Crimsix. All righty, there you have it. That is it, right? That is the breakdown of the greatest Call of Duty Esports career that has ever existed. And I know there's always a debate of who, greatest versus best, all this stuff. I don't care about any of that. I really don't. I don't care about that. Who is the greatest? It is Crimsix, and it's for all the reasons that we listed. Now, do I understand that not everybody's going to agree with that opinion? Of course I do. I'm not saying, and I think that honestly the conversation is healthy. However, I want there to be at least a video of which that someone could point at and say, listen, if you don't agree, just watch this video and see if your opinion changes. That's really what the goal of this video is to be about. I will say that I did watch the Crimsix video. It did make me sad based on a lot of things that he was talking about. I will say that it has been a pleasure watching. It has been a pleasure covering, talking about through different content pieces, casting over his career has been unbelievable. And to be able to say that I got to cast, cover a player like Crimsix, who is larger than life without question when we talk about his personality and, as he kind of became more of a face of the league as he got older, was an absolute pleasure. And I wish him the very best when it comes down to his future success and content and all that stuff. But like I said, I don't want this video to be about, belittling somebody else because I think that someone's number one, number two, number three. Listen, when it comes down to greatest player of all time debates, there's always going to be someone who's left out to dry. At some point, we will be putting out a list on who I think is the top 5, top 10 greatest players of all time. That will be coming out at some point for sure. And I will say as well that it's possible that somebody in the future can pass Crimsix as the greatest player of all time. I'm not somebody who's here to say that this will never be possible. Nobody will ever, accomplish what Crimsix, in terms of, the GOAT status. I'm not saying that it's not possible. I'm just saying that as it stands for right now, he is. He is in my book, and I think he should be in your book as well. Now, feel free, let's get involved in the comments. Feel free to get involved in the comments of this video. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. If you are listening to this, you can feel free to tweet at me as well on Twitter at LandO. We'll love to continue this conversation down there as well. Hope you guys enjoyed this kind of long form type of story content. It's been a pleasure making it for you. And if you haven't done so already, make sure to like this video. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already. More content like this, more off-season stuff, roster mania stuff, leading into Modern Warfare 2. Take it easy, guys, and thank you again so much for checking out the channel.